The morning light filtered through the ancient stained-glass windows of Windsor Estate, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floor, where Catherine stood in her silk nightgown, tears streaming down her face. In her trembling hands, she held a handwritten letter that would change everything about this day, her 44th birthday. What was supposed to be a quiet, intimate family celebration had just become something far more profound and unexpected. The letter, written in her late mother's familiar handwriting, had been discovered just hours ago behind a loose stone in the estate's century-old library wall. It was dated exactly 20 years ago, the day Catherine had turned 24, and it contained secrets about her family's past that she never knew existed. As she read the words that seemed to reach across time itself, Catherine realized that this birthday wouldn't just mark another year of her life. It would unlock mysteries that had been waiting decades to be revealed. Her husband's footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, and she could hear their children's excited chatter about the surprise they had planned for her. But now, everything felt different. The celebration they had so carefully orchestrated would become the backdrop for revelations that would reshape their understanding of who they really were as a family. What Catherine didn't know was that this single letter was just the beginning, and that by the end of this extraordinary day, every member of her family would discover something about themselves they never imagined possible. Catherine wiped away her tears and carefully folded the letter, her heart still racing from its revelations. The Windsor estate had been in her family for generations, but according to her mother's words, there were rooms and passages she had never discovered, hiding places where more family secrets waited to be found. She tucked the letter into the pocket of her robe and tried to compose herself as the sounds of her family grew closer. "Happy birthday, my love," came the warm voice of her husband, James, as he appeared in the doorway of the library. He carried a silver tray with her favorite morning tea, Earl Grey with honey and cream, and his eyes immediately noticed her emotional state. After 18 years of marriage, he could read her expressions like a familiar book. "You're up early for your special day," he said, setting the tray on the antique mahogany desk and moving toward her with concern. "Is everything all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." Catherine managed a trembling smile, her hand unconsciously touching the letter in her pocket. "Perhaps I have," she whispered, then cleared her throat more firmly. "I couldn't sleep, so I came down here to think." "You know how much I love this room?" The library truly was magnificent. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined every wall, filled with leather-bound volumes that had been collected over 2 centuries. Persian rugs covered the polished oak floors, and a massive stone fireplace dominated one end of the room. It was here that Catherine had spent countless hours as a child, reading stories and dreaming of adventures. Now, it seemed, the greatest adventure was just beginning. James wrapped his arms around her, and she breathed in his familiar scent of sandalwood cologne and morning coffee. "The children have been up since dawn, plotting something," he chuckled. "Emma keeps giggling every time someone mentions your name, and Michael has been unusually secretive about that package that arrived yesterday." Their daughter Emma, 15 and full of teenage energy, had inherited Catherine's love for dramatic gestures and surprises. Michael, their 17-year-old son, was typically more reserved but had a heart as big as the estate itself. Catherine felt a pang of emotion thinking about how this day might affect them. The letter in her pocket suggested that their family history was far more complex than any of them had realized. "They're good kids," Catherine murmured against James's chest. "Sometimes I wonder if we've given them enough, if growing up in a place like this has prepared them for the real world." "Are you having one of those milestone birthday moments?" James asked gently, pulling back to look at her face. 44 isn't exactly a crisis year, but I know these birthdays can make us reflective." Catherine nodded, though she knew her contemplation had nothing to do with aging and everything to do with the bombshell her mother had left for her to discover. According to the letter, there were things about the Windsor family that had been deliberately hidden, protected secrets that were passed down only when someone was deemed ready to handle them. Her mother had written that Catherine's 44th birthday would be the right time, but she had died 3 years earlier without having the chance to reveal them in person. "Mom!" Emma's voice rang out from somewhere in the main hall, followed by the sound of running feet. "Mom, where are you?" "We have something amazing to show you." James laughed and called back. "She's in the library, sweetheart, but give her a few minutes to get dressed first." "Already dressed?" Emma appeared in the doorway, her blonde hair still messy from sleep but her green eyes bright with excitement. She wore pajamas covered in tiny cats and had clearly run down from her bedroom on the 2nd floor. "This can't wait. Michael found something incredible in the attic last night, and we think it's connected to the surprise we planned for your birthday." Catherine felt her heart skip a beat. What kind of something? Michael appeared behind his sister, taller than both his parents now, and with his father's dark hair but Catherine's expressive eyes. He carried what looked like an old wooden box, ornately carved, and obviously very old. We were looking for decorations for tonight's dinner when we found this hidden behind some old trunks. There's a letter attached to it, addressed to you, Mum. It's dated from 20 years ago. Catherine's legs felt weak. Another letter? She exchanged glances with James, who looked puzzled, but not alarmed. He didn't know yet that their quiet family celebration was about to become something much more complex. The handwriting looks like Grandmother Eleanor's, Emma added, bouncing on her toes with anticipation. We didn't open it, of course, but we've been dying to know what's inside that box since Michael found it. Catherine approached her son slowly, her mind racing. Eleanor had been her grandmother, her mother's mother, who had died when Catherine was only 12. She had been a formidable woman with steel-grey hair and piercing blue eyes, known throughout their small community for her intelligence and fierce independence. Catherine had always suspected that Eleanor knew more about their family history than she let on, but she had never imagined there might be physical evidence hidden away. The wooden box was about the size of a shoebox but much heavier. Its surface was covered in intricate carvings that looked Celtic in origin, spirals and knots that seemed to tell a story if you looked at them long enough. A sealed envelope was tied to the top with a faded blue ribbon, and Catherine could indeed see her grandmother's distinctive handwriting spelling out her name. "Should I open it now?" Catherine asked, though her voice came out as barely a whisper. James moved closer, sensing that something significant was happening, even if he didn't understand what. "It's your birthday," Michael said with a grin. "Besides, Emma and I have been going crazy with curiosity since last night. We even considered opening it ourselves, but we figured you'd probably ground us until we're 30. "Smart kids," James laughed, though Catherine could hear the question in his voice. He was starting to realize that this wasn't just a simple family heirloom that had been misplaced. Catherine took the box from Michael's hands and felt its weight. Whatever was inside was substantial. She untied the ribbon with trembling fingers and opened the envelope first. The letter inside was written on the same cream-colored stationery that her mother had used for the letter she'd found earlier, and the handwriting was indeed her grandmother's. "My dearest Catherine," she read aloud, "if you are reading this, then you have reached your 44th year, and it is time for you to learn the truth about our family's real heritage. The box contains items that have been passed down through generations of Windsor women, hidden from those who would not understand their significance. Your mother was meant to share these secrets with you, but if circumstances have prevented that, then this letter and these artifacts will have to suffice." Catherine paused, looking up at her family's expectant faces. Emma was practically vibrating with excitement. Michael looked intrigued but patient, and James appeared concerned about her obvious emotional state. "There's more," Catherine continued. "What you will find in this box will change how you see our family's place in history. We are not simply the descendants of wealthy landowners, as you have always been told. Our lineage traces back to something far more extraordinary, something that has been carefully protected and preserved for over 3 centuries. The women of our family have always been the guardians of these secrets, and now that responsibility passes to you." Emma gasped dramatically. "Oh my God, are we like descendants of royalty or something? Are we secretly related to the Queen?" Michael rolled his eyes at his sister's enthusiasm, but leaned in closer. "What else does it say, Mum?" Catherine's hands were shaking now as she continued reading. "The items in this box will help you understand your true heritage. There are documents, photographs, and artifacts that tell the real story of how the Windsor family came to own this estate. But more importantly, there are things that will help you understand the gifts that run in our bloodline, gifts that you may have already started to notice in yourself, and that will likely manifest in your children as they come of age." James stepped closer and gently placed his hand on Catherine's shoulder. "Gifts? What kind of gifts?" Catherine looked up from the letter, her eyes meeting her husband's puzzled gaze. "I think I need to open the box to find out." She set the letter aside and carefully lifted the wooden lid. Inside, nestled in faded velvet lining, were several items that made her gasp. There was a leather-bound journal with pages that looked centuries old, a collection of what appeared to be very old photographs, several pieces of antique jewelry that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light, and a sealed glass vial containing what looked like ordinary water but somehow felt significant. But what caught her attention most was a small painting, no larger than a book, depicting a woman who looked remarkably like Catherine herself. The woman in the portrait wore an elaborate dress from what looked like the 1600s, but her face could have been Catherine's own reflection. At the bottom of the frame in tiny script were the words, "Lady Margaret Windsor, Keeper of the Ancient Ways, 1642. Ma," Michael said softly. "That woman looks exactly like you." Emma leaned over the box, her eyes wide. And look at this jewelry. It's gorgeous, but it looks so old. Why would great-grandmother have hidden all this stuff away? Catherine picked up the leather journal and opened it carefully. The first page was written in the same hand as the portrait's inscription, but the date was much more recent. 1985, the year Catherine had turned 24. "This journal has been passed down through our family for generations," she read aloud. "Each woman adds her own experiences and discoveries before passing it on to the next keeper. The women of the Windsor line are not ordinary. We possess what some would call supernatural gifts, the ability to sense things others cannot, to heal in ways that science cannot explain, and to protect those we love through means that most would consider impossible."
The room fell silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner.
James looked skeptical, but not dismissive, while both children stared at their mother with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "That's impossible," James said gently. "Catherine, your family has always been perfectly normal. Wealthy, yes, and maybe a bit eccentric, but there's never been anything supernatural about any of you." Catherine looked at him with a small, sad smile. "Are you sure about that, James? Think about all the times I've known things I shouldn't have known. Remember when I woke up in the middle of the night, absolutely certain that your father had fallen and broken his hip, even though he lived 200 miles away and we hadn't spoken to him in weeks?" James frowned, remembering. "That was just intuition. And what about when Emma was 8 and got lost in the woods behind the estate?" Catherine continued. "I found her in less than an hour, even though the search party had been looking all day. I walked straight to her as if something was guiding me." Emma's eyes grew even wider. "I remember that. You said you could hear me calling, but I wasn't making any noise. I was too scared to yell." Catherine nodded slowly. "I could hear you, sweetheart. Not with my ears, but somehow I could sense exactly where you were and that you were frightened but safe."
Michael, who had always been the more analytical of the two children, picked up one of the old photographs from the box.
"This is definitely our estate, but look at the date on the back. 1823. And this woman standing in front of the main entrance." He held up the photograph for everyone to see. The woman in the picture wore the clothing of the early 1800s, but her face was unmistakably similar to Catherine's, just as the painted portrait had been. "It's like looking at a family of identical twins separated by centuries," James murmured, his skepticism beginning to waver. Catherine picked up another item from the box, a small silver pendant in the shape of a crescent moon with what appeared to be a star made of some kind of crystal embedded in its center. The moment her fingers touched it, she felt a strange warmth spread through her hand and up her arm. The sensation was not unpleasant, but it was definitely unusual. "Mom, you're glowing," Emma whispered, her voice full of awe. Catherine looked down at her hand and gasped. The pendant was indeed emitting a soft silvery light, and the glow seemed to be spreading to her fingers where they touched the metal. "This isn't possible," James said, but his voice held wonder rather than disbelief now. "Catherine, what's happening?" Catherine felt a strange sense of recognition, as if some part of her that had been sleeping was finally waking up. "I think," she said slowly, "I'm finally becoming who I was always meant to be." The silver light from the pendant gradually faded, but the warmth in Catherine's hand remained. She set the pendant back in the box carefully, her mind reeling from what had just happened. James stood frozen beside her, while Emma and Michael exchanged excited glances. "Okay, that was definitely not normal," Michael said, his scientific mind trying to process what he had witnessed. "Mom, how did you make that thing light up?" Catherine shook her head slowly. "I honestly don't know. I just touched it, and it responded." She looked down at the journal again, flipping through pages filled with different handwritings from different eras. "But according to this, it's apparently something that runs in our family." James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Catherine recognized as his way of dealing with stress. "Let me get this straight. You're telling me that your family has some kind of magical abilities, and you're just finding out about it now on your 44th birthday?" "It appears that way," Catherine replied, continuing to read from the journal. Listen to this entry from 1952. "Today, I taught my daughter Sarah how to use the healing touch. She was frightened at first when her hands began to glow while treating the injured barn cat, but by evening she was healing cuts and bruises as if they had never existed. The gift manifests differently in each generation, but it always appears when the woman is ready to accept her true nature." Emma bounced excitedly. "Mum, do you think Michael and I might have these abilities too?" The journal said something about gifts manifesting as we come of age. Catherine looked at her children with new eyes, wondering if she had missed signs of something extraordinary in them. Emma had always been unusually empathetic, often knowing when someone was upset before they showed any outward signs. And Michael had an uncanny ability to fix things that shouldn't have been repairable, as if he instinctively understood how objects wanted to function. "We should test it," Michael said practically. "If this is real, then there should be ways to prove it." James held up his hands. "Wait, let's slow down here. Even if we accept that something unusual just happened with that pendant, we can't just assume that magic is real and that our family is somehow special." Catherine picked up another photograph from the box, this one showing the estate's garden in what appeared to be the 1940s. In the background, barely visible, a woman knelt beside a flower bed with her hands extended toward a wilted rose bush. The next photo in the sequence showed the same bush in full, brilliant bloom. "James," Catherine said softly, "you've lived with me for 18 years. Have you ever noticed anything about the garden here?" He frowned, thinking. "What do you mean?" "I mean that nothing ever dies when I'm tending it. Plants that should have been killed by disease or harsh weather somehow always recover when I work with them. You've commented on it yourself, how our garden produces better flowers and vegetables than anyone else's in the county, even during drought years." James's expression became more thoughtful. "I always assumed you just had a green thumb." "And what about my cooking?" Catherine continued. "How many times have you said that my food tastes better than it should, that somehow I can take ordinary ingredients and create meals that seem almost magical?" Emma gasped. "Oh my God, remember last year when I was so sick with that awful flu, and you made me that soup? I felt completely better after just one bowl, even though I'd been bedridden for 3 days." Michael nodded slowly. "And remember when I broke my wrist falling off my bike when I was 12? The doctor said it would take 6 weeks to heal, but when you kept putting your hands on the cast and telling me healing stories, it was completely healed in 10 days. The doctor was amazed." Catherine felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place in her mind. "I always told myself these things were coincidences, or that I was just being a good mother and wife. But what if they weren't coincidences at all?" She picked up the glass vial from the box and held it up to the morning light streaming through the library windows. The liquid inside looked like water, but it seemed to shimmer with tiny points of light, like captured starlight. James moved closer, his scientific background making him curious despite his skepticism. "What do you think it is?" Catherine opened the journal to a page marked with a piece of faded ribbon. "Here's an entry about it from 1889. The blessed water has been in our family for 6 generations. When used properly, it can heal serious injuries and illnesses that would otherwise be fatal. Each keeper must use it sparingly, as it cannot be replaced until the next lunar eclipse, when a Windsor woman performs the ceremony of renewal." "A ceremony of renewal?" Emma asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. "That sounds so mysterious and cool." Michael, ever practical, pointed to another item in the box. "What about these other things? This looks like some kind of map." Catherine carefully unfolded what appeared to be a hand-drawn blueprint of the Windsor estate, but it showed rooms and passages that she had never seen before. Secret passages were marked in red ink, connecting different parts of the house in ways that seemed impossible, given the layout she knew. "According to this, there's a hidden room directly below this library," she said, studying the map carefully. "And look, there are passages that lead from the main house to the old chapel and even to the groundskeeper's cottage." James leaned over her shoulder to look at the map. "That's architecturally fascinating, but I don't see how it connects to this magical family heritage theory." Catherine found another entry in the journal that made her heart race. "Here's something from 1723. The secret chambers beneath the estate have protected our family's most precious artifacts for over a century. When the authorities came looking for evidence of witchcraft, we were able to hide everything safely below ground. The passages allow us to move unseen when necessary, and the blessed chamber in the deepest level provides a place for the most sacred ceremonies." "Witchcraft?" James asked, his voice rising slightly. "Catherine, you can't seriously believe that your family were witches." "Not witches," Catherine corrected. "Reading further." "Listen to this. We are not witches, as the ignorant would call us. We are healers, protectors and guardians of ancient knowledge. Our abilities come not from darkness, but from a deep connection to the natural world and the healing energies that flow through all living things. We use our gifts to help others, to protect our community, and to preserve wisdom that would otherwise be lost." Emma clapped her hands together. "Mum, we have to explore those secret passages. This is like something out of a movie." Michael studied the map more carefully. If this is accurate, there should be a hidden door somewhere in this room. Look, it shows an entrance right behind that bookshelf over there. They all turned to look at the bookshelf Michael was pointing to. It appeared completely ordinary, filled with leather-bound volumes that Catherine had read countless times over the years. The journal says something about a specific book that serves as a key, Catherine said, flipping through pages. Here it is. The entrance to the sacred spaces is revealed when the keeper touches the spine of the red leather volume titled Ancient Healing Arts, third shelf from the top, seventh book from the left. Catherine walked over to the bookshelf and counted carefully. Sure enough, there was a red leather book exactly where the journal indicated. She had noticed it many times before, but had never actually taken it down to read. Should I try it? She asked, looking back at her family. Absolutely, Emma said immediately. Michael nodded his agreement while James looked torn between curiosity and concern. Maybe we should think about this first, James said. If there really are secret passages in this house, they could be dangerous. The structure might not be sound after all these years. Catherine touched the spine of the indicated book gently. Only one way to find out. The moment her fingers made contact with the leather binding, there was a soft clicking sound, and the entire bookshelf began to swing inward like a door. Cool air flowed out from the dark space beyond, carrying the scent of old stone and something else. Something that reminded Catherine of the garden after a rainfall. No way, Michael breathed. It actually worked. Emma rushed forward to peer into the darkness beyond the secret door. There are stairs going down, and I think I can see some kind of light at the bottom. James stepped protectively in front of his daughter. Nobody goes down there until we know it's safe. Catherine, this is incredible, but we need to be careful. We don't know what condition those passages are in, or what we might find down there. Catherine nodded, but she felt drawn to the mysterious space beyond the door. Something deep inside her seemed to recognize this place, as if her subconscious mind had always known it was there. The journal mentions something about lights that activate when a Windsor woman enters the sacred spaces, she said, reading from another page. According to this, the chambers below are protected by some kind of preservation magic that keeps them exactly as they were when they were first created. Michael pulled out his phone and activated its flashlight. Magic or not, I think we should use some modern technology too. He shined the light into the passage, revealing stone steps that descended into shadows. I'll go first, Catherine decided. If this place responds to me specifically, then I should be the one to test whether it's safe. She stepped across the threshold of the secret door and immediately felt the same warmth she had experienced when touching the pendant. As she moved down the first few steps, soft lights began to glow along the walls, illuminating the passage in a gentle golden radiance. Okay, that's definitely not electricity, James said, his voice echoing slightly in the stone passage. Those lights don't have any visible power source. The lights continued to brighten as Catherine descended, revealing beautifully carved stone walls covered in the same Celtic designs that decorated the wooden box. The air felt fresh and clean, without the mustiness she would have expected from a space that had been sealed for decades. It's beautiful, she called back to her family. And it feels safe, like coming home. One by one, the others followed her down the steps. The passage was wider than it had appeared from above, easily accommodating all four of them walking side by side. After about 20 steps, it opened into a circular chamber that took Catherine's breath away. The room was clearly ancient, with walls carved from living rock and a domed ceiling painted with constellations that seemed to move and sparkle in the magical light. In the center of the chamber stood a large stone table surrounded by shelves filled with books, scrolls, glass containers, and artifacts that looked like they belonged in a museum. This is impossible, James whispered. The house was built in 1798, but this chamber looks like it's been here for centuries longer than that. Catherine approached one of the bookshelves and carefully removed a volume bound in midnight blue leather. When she opened it, the pages were filled with detailed illustrations of plants and healing techniques, accompanied by handwritten notes in several different languages. According to the journal upstairs, this chamber was discovered when they were building the house, she said, her voice filled with wonder. The Windsor family built the estate specifically to protect and conceal this place. They didn't create it, they found it and became its guardians. Emma wandered around the chamber, her eyes wide with amazement. Mum, look at all this stuff. There are bottles and jars everywhere, and some of them are glowing just like that pendant did. Michael had found what appeared to be a telescope, but when he looked through it, he gasped in surprise. This isn't pointing at the sky. It's showing me images of places I've never seen before. Beautiful landscapes and cities that look ancient but somehow alive. Catherine felt a deep sense of rightness being in this space, as if she had finally found a part of herself that had been missing her entire life. I think, she said slowly, our quiet family birthday celebration is about to become something much more significant. James looked around the chamber with a mixture of awe and concern. Catherine, whatever this place is, whatever your family's history really involves, we need to be very careful about how we proceed. This is clearly something that's been kept secret for very important reasons. As if responding to his words, one of the books on the central table began to glow softly. Catherine approached it carefully and saw that it was bound in silver leather, with her name embossed on the cover in elegant script. I think, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, this birthday is going to change everything. Catherine reached for the silver-bound book with trembling hands. The cover was warm to the touch, and as she lifted it, the embossed letters of her name seemed to shimmer and pulse with inner light. When she opened to the first page, words began to appear as if written by an invisible hand. Welcome, Catherine Windsor, 44th Keeper of the Sacred Trust, the words read. You have arrived at your destined moment. The Chamber recognizes you as the rightful heir to centuries of wisdom and responsibility. Your training begins now. Emma gasped and moved closer. Mom, the words are writing themselves. This is like something out of Harry Potter, but it's really happening. James stood behind Catherine, reading over her shoulder with an expression of amazement and growing concern. Catherine, this is beyond anything we could have imagined. Are you sure you want to continue? We have no idea what we're getting involved in. Catherine looked around at her family. Her husband's worried but supportive face, Emma's bright excitement, and Michael's fascination as he continued exploring the chamber's artifacts. I think we passed the point of no return when I touched that first pendant, she said softly. Besides, this feels right somehow, like I've been preparing for this moment my whole life without realizing it. She turned the page and more text appeared. The abilities that run in your bloodline are not supernatural in the way most people understand the word. You are connected to natural energies that flow through all living things, energies that most humans have forgotten how to perceive or use. Your family has served as guardians of this knowledge for 347 years. Michael looked up from the telescope he had been studying. Mom, this thing is showing me what looks like historical events. I can see people in old-fashioned clothes doing things that look like, well, like magic. But the people look like us, like our family. Catherine moved to join him at the telescope, leaving the book open on the table. When she looked through the eyepiece, she saw a woman who could have been her twin sister standing in a village square sometime in what appeared to be the 1600s. The woman was tending to injured people, and wherever she placed her hands, wounds healed and color returned to pale faces. That's Lady Margaret, Catherine whispered, recognizing the woman from the portrait they had found upstairs. My ancestor. As she watched, Lady Margaret looked up from her healing work and seemed to look directly through the telescope at Catherine, as if she could see across the centuries. The woman smiled and nodded, then mouthed words that Catherine somehow understood. The gift continues. Emma had discovered a shelf filled with what appeared to be journals, each one labeled with dates spanning centuries. Mom, look at this one from 1847. It's written by someone named Eleanor Windsor. That was great-grandmother's name, right? There have been several Eleanors in our family line, Catherine said, moving away from the telescope. It was tradition to name at least one daughter in each generation Eleanor. She took the journal from Emma and opened it carefully. The handwriting was different from her grandmother's, but the words were clear. Today I prevented the cholera outbreak that would have killed half our village. The healing waters from the sacred spring combined with the knowledge passed down through our family allowed me to create a remedy that the local doctor called miraculous. But I know the truth. We are simply fulfilling our purpose as protectors and healers. James sat down heavily on a stone bench that had been carved directly from the chamber wall. Let me see if I understand this correctly. Your family has been using some kind of natural healing abilities to help people for over 3 centuries, and they've been keeping it secret to avoid... what? Persecution? Accusations of witchcraft? Catherine found another section of the silver book that seemed to answer his question. The words appeared as she touched the page. The knowledge and abilities your family guards were once common among humans, but as societies changed and science developed in different directions, these connections to natural healing energies were forgotten or actively suppressed. Those who retained these abilities learned to hide them for their own protection and to preserve the knowledge for future generations who might need it. Michael had moved to a different part of the chamber and found what appeared to be a workshop area with tables covered in grinding stones, measuring devices, and containers filled with various substances. This looks like an ancient pharmacy or laboratory. Everything is in perfect condition, like someone was just working here yesterday. Catherine joined him and picked up a small notebook lying open on one of the tables. The ink looked fresh and the handwriting was contemporary. Her heart stopped when she recognized the writing. It was her mother's. "Your mother continued the work until her death 3 years ago," the silver book wrote as if responding to Catherine's discovery. "She prepared everything for your inheritance, knowing that you would find your way here when the time was right. The workshop contains remedies she created for various ailments, along with instructions for making more." Emma found a large mirror set into one of the walls, but its surface didn't reflect the chamber around them. Instead, it showed what appeared to be live images of different locations. "I can see our village from here," she said excitedly. "And there's Mrs. Patterson from down the road. She looks like she's in her garden, but something's wrong. She's fallen and can't get up." Catherine rushed to the mirror and saw their elderly neighbor lying beside her rose bushes, clearly in distress. Without thinking, she placed her hand on the mirror's surface and felt the now familiar warmth spread through her fingers. "I can help her," Catherine said with sudden certainty. "I know I can." She turned to the workshop and began gathering items almost instinctively. A small vial of what looked like ordinary water, a handful of dried herbs, and a piece of smooth stone that felt warm in her palm. "Catherine, what are you doing?" James asked, his voice tight with concern. "You can't just experiment with unknown substances." "They're not unknown," Catherine replied, and realized she meant it. Somehow, the knowledge of how to use these items was flowing into her mind as naturally as remembering her own name. "I know exactly what each of these things does and how to use them safely." She looked at the workshop more carefully and found a leather pouch that seemed designed to carry healing supplies. As she packed the items, the silver book provided more information. "Your training will be gradual, but your intuitive knowledge will guide you when help is needed immediately. Trust your instincts. They are backed by generations of accumulated wisdom." "Mom, Mrs. Patterson is really hurt," Emma said urgently from the mirror. "She's not moving much, and I think she might be unconscious now." Catherine slung the leather pouch across her shoulder and headed toward the chamber entrance. "We need to go help her. All of us." "Wait," Michael called out. "Shouldn't we plan this? What are you going to tell her about how you knew she was hurt? And what if whatever you're planning to do doesn't work?" Catherine paused at the foot of the stone steps. "I'll figure that out when we get there. Right now, a friend needs help, and I have the ability to provide it. Isn't that what these gifts are for?" James stood up and moved to join her. "If we're doing this, we do it together. Whatever happens, we're a family, and we support each other." They climbed back up to the library, where Catherine quickly closed the secret passage and grabbed a regular first aid kit to provide a conventional explanation for their visit to Mrs. Patterson. As they hurried outside toward their neighbor's house, Catherine felt a strange mix of nervousness and confidence. The morning air was crisp and clear, and she could smell the distinctive scent of autumn leaves mixed with the last roses of the season. Everything looked the same as it had every other day of her life, but she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Mrs. Patterson's garden was only a 10-minute walk from the estate, but Catherine found herself moving faster than usual, driven by an urgency she couldn't fully explain. When they arrived, they found the elderly woman conscious but clearly in pain, sitting on the ground beside her fallen ladder. "Oh, my dear, I'm so embarrassed," Mrs. Redshade said. Patterson said as they approached. "I was trying to cut back some of the higher branches on my rose bushes, and the ladder slipped. I think I may have twisted my ankle quite badly." Catherine knelt beside her neighbor and gently examined the injured ankle. The moment her hands made contact, she could sense much more than just the twisted joint. Mrs. Patterson had also jarred her back in the fall and was developing a nasty bruise on her hip. "Let me help you," Catherine said softly, allowing the warmth to flow through her hands. She could feel the damaged tissues responding to her touch, inflammation reducing and torn muscles beginning to knit back together. Emma and Michael watched in fascination as a soft glow began to emanate from their mother's hands, so subtle that James might have missed it if he hadn't been looking for it.
"Oh my," Mrs.
Patterson sighed, her face relaxing as the pain visibly ebbed away. "You have such gentle hands, dear. You missed your calling as a nurse." Within a few minutes, Mrs. Pole. Patterson was able to stand and walk without discomfort. She insisted that she felt better than she had in months, attributing her improved condition to Catherine's excellent first aid skills and the warming effect of the morning sun. As they walked back toward the estate, Emma bounced with excitement. Mom, that was incredible. You actually healed her completely. Did you see how the swelling in her ankle just disappeared? Michael nodded enthusiastically. And she had no idea anything unusual happened. She just thought you were really good at conventional first aid. James was quiet for most of the walk home, processing what he had witnessed. Finally, as they reached their front door, he spoke. Catherine, what you did back there was genuinely miraculous. But I'm worried about what this means for our family. How do we handle something this significant? Catherine stopped walking and turned to face her husband and children. I think, she said slowly, we're going to figure it out together. Today was supposed to be about celebrating my birthday with the people I love most. Maybe it's still about that, just in a way we never could have expected. Emma grinned. This is definitely the most exciting birthday celebration ever. What do we do next? Catherine looked back toward the estate that had been her home for 18 years and was apparently the repository for centuries of family secrets. Next, we go back to that chamber and start learning everything we need to know, because if I'm now the 44th keeper of the sacred trust, then I have a lot of catching up to do. As they entered the house, Catherine felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders, but it didn't feel heavy. Instead, it felt like coming home to a part of herself she had never known was missing. The quiet family celebration she had planned had indeed become something much more significant. The beginning of a new chapter, not just in her life, but in the continuing story of her family's ancient legacy. Back in the library, Catherine hesitated before opening the secret passage again. The morning's events had transformed her understanding of reality so completely that she felt almost dizzy. James noticed her uncertainty and gently took her hand. Are you having second thoughts? He asked softly. Because if you are, that's completely understandable. We don't have to dive deeper into this right now. Catherine squeezed his hand gratefully. I'm not having second thoughts exactly, but I am feeling overwhelmed. An hour ago, I thought I was just a woman turning 44 who lived in an old estate with her family. Now I'm apparently the latest in a long line of magical healers with secret responsibilities I don't understand yet. Emma flopped down in one of the library's leather armchairs. But Mum, think about how amazing this is. You've always been incredible at making people feel better. Remember when I had that terrible anxiety attack before my GCSE exams last year? You just sat with me and held my hands, and somehow I felt completely calm. I thought it was just because you're a great mum, but maybe it was something more. Michael was already studying the map they had found in the box, comparing it to what they had seen in the chamber below. According to this, there were at least 6 other hidden rooms connected by those passages. What if there are more family artifacts in them? More information about what we're supposed to do with these abilities? Catherine felt her curiosity overcoming her apprehension. You're right. If I'm going to be responsible for this legacy, I need to understand it properly. She touched the red leather book spine again, and the passage opened with the same soft clicking sound. This time, when they descended into the chamber, Catherine noticed details she had missed before. The walls were covered with carved symbols that seemed to tell stories. Images of people healing others, protecting communities from disasters, and gathering plants under starlight. The constellations painted on the ceiling were not random decorations but appeared to be star charts marking specific dates and celestial events. The silver book was still open where she had left it, and new text had appeared. Now that you have successfully used your abilities for the first time, you are ready to learn about the greater responsibilities that come with your heritage. The Windsor family has served as guardians not only of healing knowledge, but of several sacred sites throughout this region of England. Sacred sites? James asked, reading over Catherine's shoulder. What kind of sacred sites? Catherine turned the page, and a detailed map appeared, showing their local area with several locations marked in glowing symbols. There are 7 sites within a 20-mile radius of the estate that contain natural springs, stone circles, and groves that amplify the healing energies your family channels. Your predecessors have maintained and protected these places for generations. Emma pointed to one of the symbols on the map. That's near the old church ruins where we used to have picnics when I was little. I always loved that spot. It felt so peaceful and special. Michael studied the map more carefully. And this one is at Thornwick Hill, where I go hiking. There's a ring of standing stones up there that I always thought were just ancient historical markers. Catherine felt a thrill of recognition. I know all these places. I've been drawn to them my whole life without understanding why. They're all spots where I've gone to think or to feel calm when I was stressed or upset. The book continued to reveal information as she read. Each site requires regular care and attention to maintain its beneficial properties. This involves specific rituals performed at certain times of the year, usually aligned with seasonal changes in lunar cycles. Your mother kept detailed records of when and how these ceremonies should be performed. James sat down at the central stone table and looked around the chamber with new understanding. So this isn't just about individual healing abilities. Your family has been maintaining some kind of network of places that benefit the entire community. It seems that way, Catherine agreed. She found another section of the workshop area that contained what appeared to be calendars and scheduling charts. According to these notes, the autumn equinox ceremony is coming up in just 2 weeks. It's supposed to be performed at the Stone Circle on Thornwick Hill. Emma jumped up excitedly. Can we go see the Stone Circle today? I want to understand what these places really are. Michael nodded enthusiastically. We could make it a family expedition. Besides, if Mom is supposed to perform some kind of ceremony there, she should probably familiarize herself with the location. Catherine felt both excitement and nervousness at the thought of visiting one of the sacred sites with her new understanding of their significance. What if I'm not ready? What if I do something wrong? The Silver Book seemed to respond to her concerns. New words appeared on the page. Your intuitive connection to these sites has been developing your entire life. Trust your instincts when you visit them. You will know what feels right and what doesn't. The sites themselves will guide you when you are ready to perform your first ceremony. James stood up and moved to examine some of the other artifacts in the chamber. Before we go exploring mysterious stone circles, I think we should learn more about what we're dealing with here. Catherine, what else is in that workshop area? Catherine moved to the tables where she had found her mother's notebook. Now that she knew to look for them, she could see that there were actually several different notebooks, each one labeled with specific topics. There's one for healing remedies, one for what looks like weather working, whatever that means, and one labeled Community Protection Protocols. She opened the Community Protection Notebook and found detailed instructions for responding to various types of local emergencies. According to this, during the Great Flu Pandemic of 1918, my great-great-grandmother Eleanor worked with the local doctors to create remedies that dramatically reduced the death rate in our area. And during the terrible flooding in 1953, another family member used weatherworking to redirect the worst of the storm away from the villages. Michael looked up from a shelf where he had been examining what appeared to be scientific instruments mixed with more mystical-looking tools. This is starting to sound like your family were basically secret emergency responders with supernatural abilities. Not supernatural, Emma corrected, clearly remembering what they had read earlier. Connected to natural energies that most people can't access anymore. James picked up one of the glowing bottles from a nearby shelf and examined it carefully. Whether we call it supernatural or natural, the fact remains that this is far beyond anything I learned in my physics degree. Some of this stuff seems to violate fundamental laws of science. Catherine found herself smiling despite her nervousness. Maybe the laws of science aren't as complete as we thought they were. Maybe there are aspects of reality that mainstream science hasn't discovered yet or has forgotten. The Silver Book responded to this observation with more text. The abilities your family possesses represent a branch of knowledge that was once understood by many human cultures. As societies became more urbanized and technology-focused, this understanding was gradually lost. Your family line has served as a repository for this knowledge, keeping it alive and functional until a time when humanity might be ready to rediscover it. Emma clapped her hands together. Oh my God, we're like living links to ancient wisdom. This is so much cooler than anything I learned in history class. Michael had found what appeared to be a communication device of some kind, a crystal bowl filled with water that showed images of distant places when he touched its rim. Mom, you need to see this. I think this is how the previous keepers stayed in touch with other families like ours. Catherine approached the crystal bowl and carefully placed her fingertips on its edge. The water inside began to swirl, and images appeared in its depths. She saw other estates and homes scattered across Britain, each with people who looked like they were performing similar roles to what her family had been doing. There are others, she whispered in amazement. We're not the only family with these responsibilities. The images in the bowl shifted to show a gathering of people in what appeared to be a large garden, all of them raising their hands toward the sky in some kind of ceremony. Catherine recognized several of the faces from photographs she had seen in the chamber's archives. This looks like it was taken recently, James observed. Look at their clothes. That's definitely contemporary fashion. Catherine touched the bowl more deliberately, and suddenly she could hear voices accompanying the images. The autumn gathering will be held at Glastonbury as planned, a woman's voice said clearly. All regional keepers are invited to attend and share their year's work. The coordination of our efforts becomes more important each year as global challenges increase, Emma gasped. They're talking about you, Mom. You're supposed to go to this gathering, aren't you? The Silver Book confirmed Emma's intuition with new text. The Autumn Gathering provides an opportunity for all the keeper families to coordinate their efforts and share knowledge. As a new keeper, your attendance is particularly important for your continued education and to establish your place in the network. James ran both hands through his hair, his earlier gesture of stress amplified. Catherine, this is getting bigger and bigger. First, it was individual healing abilities. Then it was maintaining local sacred sites. Now it turns out there's a whole network of families with similar responsibilities, and you're expected to attend some kind of conference? Catherine understood his concern, but she was beginning to feel a sense of rightness about the expanding scope of her role. James, think about it from a different perspective. What if this network has been quietly working to help communities and protect people for centuries? What if the reason so many disasters aren't as bad as they could be is because there are people like us working behind the scenes to mitigate them? Michael looked up from another artifact he had been studying. That would actually explain a lot about local history. Remember how many times our area has been spared the worst effects of national disasters? The cholera outbreaks that devastated other regions but barely touched us. The way severe weather always seems to weaken before it reaches our county. The unusually high recovery rates at our local hospital.
Emma nodded enthusiastically.
And it would explain why people always say there's something special about this area, why it feels so peaceful and healing compared to other places. Catherine felt a deep sense of purpose settling into her bones.
I think I'm beginning to understand what it means to be a keeper.
It's not just about having special abilities, it's about using those abilities to serve something larger than myself. The Silver Book provided one final piece of information as she touched its pages. Your 44th birthday marks not just your formal inheritance of these responsibilities, but the beginning of a critical period for all keeper families. Global changes in climate, society, and human consciousness are creating challenges that will require unprecedented cooperation between all the regional networks. Your role will be crucial in the years to come. James sat down again, looking somewhat overwhelmed. So not only are you discovering that your family has been secret guardians for centuries, but you're apparently inheriting these responsibilities at a time when they're becoming more important than ever. Catherine nodded slowly. It seems that way. But James, I don't feel frightened by that prospect. I feel honored, excited, like my whole life has been preparing me for something meaningful, and now I finally know what it is. She looked around at her family, her wonderful, supportive husband, who was trying to process completely revolutionary information, her brilliant children, who were embracing these discoveries with enthusiasm and wisdom beyond their years. Besides, she added with a smile, I won't be doing this alone. We're a family, and we'll figure out how to handle these responsibilities together. Today was supposed to be about celebrating my birthday with the people I love most, and I think that's exactly what we're doing, just in a way none of us could have predicted. Emma grinned. Best birthday ever, Mum, even if it's not exactly what we planned. Catherine laughed, feeling lighter despite the magnitude of what she was learning. No, it's definitely not what we planned, but I think it might be exactly what we needed. As the afternoon sun began to slant through the library windows above, Catherine realized they had been in the chamber for several hours without feeling tired or hungry. The space seemed to exist outside of normal time, providing exactly the environment they needed for learning and discovery. Before we go back upstairs, she said, I want to understand one more thing. Emma and Michael, the book mentioned that these abilities often manifest in the children of keepers as they come of age. Have either of you noticed anything unusual about yourselves lately? Emma looked thoughtful. Well, there have been a few things, but I just assumed they were normal teenage stuff. Like, I always know when someone is upset before they show any signs of it. And sometimes I have dreams about things that happen the next day. Nothing dramatic, just little things like pop quizzes at school or when it's going to rain. Michael nodded slowly. I've been able to fix things that shouldn't be fixable. Last month my computer completely crashed. The hard drive was supposedly destroyed. But when I put my hands on it and really concentrated on wanting it to work, it started up perfectly. All my files were intact, like nothing had happened. James looked at his children with new eyes. Those do sound like more than normal teenage quirks. But are you both okay with the idea that you might be developing these abilities? It's a lot to handle, and you're both still so young. Emma straightened her shoulders with determination. Dad, I'm 15. In 3 years, I'll be in university making decisions about my entire future. If I'm going to inherit some kind of magical healing abilities, I want to learn about them properly. Besides, think of all the good we could do, Michael agreed. And I'm already 17. If these abilities are part of who I am, then I want to understand them and learn to use them responsibly. It's not like they're going to go away just because we ignore them. Catherine felt a surge of pride in her children's maturity and wisdom. The Silver Book has a section about training young keepers, she said, turning to a new page. It says that abilities usually fully manifest between the ages of 16 and 18, and that early training helps ensure they develop in healthy, controlled ways. The book provided specific guidance as she read. Young keepers should begin with simple exercises in energy sensing and basic healing techniques. They should never attempt advanced work without supervision, but early practice with minor injuries and emotional healing helps build confidence and control. James moved to stand beside his children. If you're both serious about this, then we do it safely and gradually. No experimenting on your own, no trying to heal anything major without your mother's guidance, and definitely no telling your friends about any of this until we understand the implications better. Emma and Michael both nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of the situation. Catherine found another section of the book that addressed family dynamics. The most successful keeper families are those where all members, even those without active abilities, understand and support the work being done. Non-gifted family members often serve as anchors, providing stability and practical support that allows the keeper to function effectively in both mundane and magical responsibilities. James smiled at this. So, I'm going to be the anchor? I can handle that. Someone needs to keep track of normal things like paying bills and making sure everyone eats regular meals. Speaking of eating, Emma said, I'm actually getting hungry now. What time is it? Michael checked his phone. It's almost 3 o'clock. We've been down here for hours, but it feels like we just arrived. Catherine looked around the chamber one more time, committing its details to memory. I think we should go back upstairs and have some lunch. We need time to process everything we've learned, and we still have the rest of my birthday to celebrate. As they prepared to leave the chamber, the Silver Book provided one final message. Take the leather pouch and the small vial of blessed water with you. You will encounter opportunities to help others, and these tools will serve you well. Remember, the abilities you've inherited are not meant to be hidden away, but used wisely in service to others. Catherine carefully packed the items into the leather pouch and slung it across her shoulder. It felt natural there, like something she had carried all her life. They climbed back up to the library, and Catherine carefully closed the secret passage. The mundane world of their everyday life felt almost surreal after the magical revelations of the morning. I should probably start cooking the birthday dinner I planned, Catherine said, trying to return to normal family rhythms. We're having roast lamb with mint sauce, roasted vegetables, and chocolate birthday cake. I'll help, Emma offered. I want to see if I can sense anything different about food preparation now that I know about our family abilities. James headed toward the kitchen, and I'll set the table and open that bottle of wine we've been saving. If ever there was an occasion that called for our best wine, this would be it. As they moved through the familiar routines of preparing a family meal, Catherine found herself noticing things she had never paid attention to before. The way the vegetables seemed to respond to her touch as she cleaned them, how the herbs released their fragrance more intensely when she handled them, the way the entire kitchen felt more alive and vibrant. Emma was having similar experiences. Mum, when I touch the food, I can almost sense what it needs. More salt, less cooking time, different seasonings. Is this part of what we can do? I think so, Catherine replied, watching her daughter work with new appreciation. Healing and nourishment are closely connected. If we can channel healing energy, it makes sense that we'd also have insights about nutrition and food preparation. Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway. I've been thinking about what we learned today, and I have a question. If our family has been doing this work for centuries, why didn't anyone tell us about it while we were growing up? Why wait until today to reveal everything? Catherine paused in her food preparation. That's a good question. Let me think about what the letters and journals said. She remembered something from her mother's letter. I think it has to do with readiness and safety. The abilities can't be forced. They manifest naturally when someone is emotionally and mentally prepared to handle them. And the knowledge has been kept secret to protect both the keepers and the communities they serve. James joined them in the kitchen, wine glasses in hand. It also makes sense from a practical standpoint. Children can't keep secrets of this magnitude. And teenagers often lack the judgment to use powerful abilities responsibly. By waiting until adulthood, your family ensured that each keeper would be mature enough to handle the responsibilities. As they worked together to prepare the meal, Catherine felt a deep sense of contentment despite the overwhelming nature of the day's discoveries. Her family was adapting to these revelations with grace and wisdom, supporting each other through the transition. The smell of roasting lamb filled the kitchen, and Emma had prepared vegetables that seemed to glow with health and vitality. Michael had taken over setting the table and had somehow made their everyday dishes and silverware look elegant and special. "You know," Catherine said as she put the finishing touches on the mint sauce, "this morning I woke up thinking this would be a quiet family celebration. I never could have imagined that by this evening we'd be discussing magical abilities and ancient family legacies." Emma grinned. "But aren't you glad it happened this way? I mean, finding out about all this stuff makes everything so much more interesting and meaningful." James raised his wine glass in a toast. "To Catherine's 44th birthday, may it be the beginning of many extraordinary years of service, discovery, and family adventure." They clinked glasses, Emma and Michael with sparkling cider, and Catherine felt tears of gratitude welling up in her eyes. "To family," she said softly. "Whatever challenges and responsibilities lie ahead, we'll face them together." As they sat down to dinner in the estate's formal dining room, surrounded by portraits of Catherine's ancestors who had carried these same responsibilities, Catherine realized that her birthday celebration had become exactly what it was meant to be. Not just a marking of time, but a true celebration of family, purpose, and the beginning of a new chapter in an ancient story. The candles on her birthday cake seemed to burn more brightly than usual, and when she made her wish before blowing them out, she asked for wisdom and strength to serve her family's legacy with honor. As the flames went out, she could have sworn she heard whispered voices from the past, welcoming her to her true calling and promising that she would never walk this path alone. Outside, the sun was setting over the Windsor estate, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that seemed to celebrate the day's revelations. In the distance, Catherine could see the hill where the standing stones waited for her first ceremony, and beyond that, the network of sacred sites that were now her responsibility to maintain and protect. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and learning opportunities. She would need to study the ancient texts, practice her abilities, and prepare for the autumn gathering, where she would meet others who shared her calling. But tonight was for family, for gratitude, and for the quiet joy of finally understanding who she was truly meant to be. As Emma and Michael chatted excitedly about their plans to explore their own emerging abilities, and James discussed practical matters like how to balance their new responsibilities with their everyday lives, Catherine felt a profound sense of coming home to herself. Her 44th birthday had indeed changed everything, just as her grandmother's letter had promised. But the changes felt not like disruptions to their life, but like the missing pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place. She was no longer just Catherine Windsor, wife and mother living in an inherited estate. She was Catherine Windsor, 44th keeper of the sacred trust, guardian of ancient wisdom, and protector of her community's well-being. And for the first time in her life, she felt completely, perfectly herself.